It's always like pretty refreshing coming to the office, feeling like you can kind of shape your day the way you want to. Like the conversations you have with different people is always pretty entertaining to me. Learning about other people, it's never fully focused on real estate. That's how you end up really building good relationships with people, is just getting to know them.
Nadav and Gavin, I appreciate you guys joining today. Mike, good to have the first podcast we've done with two people from our side.
Thanks for having us.
We really enjoy working with you guys, and I think you guys have a really interesting story. I like what you guys are doing. I mean, you're growing really fast, 1.25 million to 8 million in a short time. You know, you guys are really figured out something within the wholesaling world. Tell us about your business and kind of how you got into the business.
Yeah, so I started about 10 years ago. I was at a big firm who does wholesaling and just really, liked the investment real estate side of things. I was in my mid-20s at the time, didn't really know how to break into the investment real estate space. Found this niche and, took a job, 100% commission, and kind of ran with it. And then I was there for about 6 years. And then Mike and I partnered up and started Vertigo about 3 years ago now, a little less. And Gavin was one of our first hires in the Denver office. Started there in Colorado. I had gone out to move to San Diego. We opened up an office there, then Florida, and then now Raleigh. So that's been over the last about 2.5, 3 years.
Yeah, I think a lot of people, they're like, everyone talks about real estate. Like, where do I start? Did you looked at other parts of real estate? How did you end up finding the niche here? Was it the first thing you got into, or did you dabble in other areas of real estate first?
Yeah, so coming out of college, I had talked to commercial real estate brokerages. I actually got a job in regular retail residential, and I hated it. It really wasn't for me. It was too much hand holding, not enough negotiating, didn't fit my personality. So I actually left that and knew I didn't really want to get back into it. But I had my license. So just kind of, figuring out, and then, saw a job ad and took it on, and I love it. It's nice to find something that you're meant to do and makes you happy, and, you can be passionate about, and then of course, makes you money too. So kind of the American dream right there.
I'm going to keep diving into this a little more because, look, wholesaling, you hear a lot of different opinions on it, and you say you love it. Tell us what you love about it, and also what's difficult about wholesaling.
What I love is the speed of the transactions. Everything moves really quickly. I like the negotiating on the front end. I like working with the investors on the back end. In our model, we built out teams, right? I love working, with teams, and, at this stage, I love seeing other people succeed. But really the most invaluable aspect of it is really learning investment real estate from the ground up and becoming an expert if you do it right. There's a lot of wholesalers that don't know what they're doing out there, and therefore they don't have the success and don't really ever get off the ground.
That's a good point. We work with some big wholesale clients, and then we've kind of talked internally. Whenever it's someone that doesn't know what they're doing, we actually just don't take those deals because if someone doesn't understand the industry and the business, it's just too hard to work with.
I think what I love about wholesaling is it's never Groundhog's Day. I think that's the biggest thing for me is like, for example, in Florida, you could have a deal in Miami, you can have a deal in Fort Lauderdale, you can have a deal in West Palm. Like they're all different, right? You might have a duplex, you might have something on the water that's worth $2 million. So it's always like pretty refreshing coming to the office, feeling like you can kind of shape your day the way you want to. It's not like you're just sitting down in front of a Excel sheet at some, job where you're just kind of crunching numbers. And I think that's why I really loved it when I first started, right? It's never mundane. You never know who you're really going to talk to. Like the conversations you have with different people is always pretty entertaining to me. So talk to guys about football, talk to guys about other things, learning about other people. It's never fully focused on real estate. That's how you end up really building good relationships with people, is just getting to know them. And then on the flip side, making a sale to them or acquiring a house, it becomes that much easier when you're, it's not, you kind of know who they are, right? Like I've had sellers, want to get dinner with me, or buyers, investors that you want to go hang out with them, whatever it might be, right? Like you can kind of hang outside of work versus just, like I said, just kind of a mundane Groundhog's Day type of thing. So I think that's what keeps it exciting in this industry.
You don't necessarily have to be polished all the time, which I think is important because, when you're talking to these sellers that are in, distressed situations, the last thing they want is some suit coming in saying, hey, I'm going to buy your house I'm going to lowball you, essentially, right? It's really about getting to know them and making people feel comfortable. And yeah, you deal with all walks of life, right? Like, and I've had sellers offer me a beer at 8 a.m, and I drank the beer at 8 a.m. with the guy because that's how you get the deal, right? So thinking on the fly, it's a lot of figuring out, I mean, I always say we're problem solvers. That's what we do. If we're not solving problems, we're not getting properties, really. And you're dealing with a lot of sensitive situations. So you have to have empathy for the situation, work through it where it's a win-win for everybody.
And that kind of goes into how you guys structure the deals too, right? Because you guys do wholesale deals, but you'll also do deals where you guys close on and then go ahead and resell, right? So it's difference in types of deals you're structuring, but also the daily life of a wholesaler.
Yeah, exactly. We're transitioning more and more over to the concurrent or double close, where we close on it and then immediately resell it to the investor. There's multiple benefits to doing that. The main one is just having control of the transaction, right? I mean, I think when an investor, right, like the reason why we get these deals is because a lot of these investors, they walk in and they try and beat up the seller because this is wrong, this is wrong, this is wrong. I will tell you, I've gone in the worst houses ever. Everybody knows that their house is a mess. Doesn't matter how bad it is. They all know it is. And they're all embarrassed. Everyone always apologizes. Sorry, my house is a mess. No worries. I see this all the time, right? But when somebody comes in their house, because when you walk in someone's house, that says a lot about a person, right? That's their home. That's, they have their memories there. They have, whatever's important to them in that house. And they don't want to feel judged in their own house. So when you assign a deal, right, now you're giving up, control of the transaction to the investor who hasn't worked for months building this relationship, right? So all of a sudden you're out of the picture because you're not really part of the transaction anymore. And this investor can come in and nitpick, right? And be difficult with the seller. And the seller is, all of a sudden their guard goes way up, right? Because they've finally let their guard down after months and months of working with you. And then it goes way up and it can blow up the whole transaction, right? So, because now they don't trust you anymore, right? Because your trust can be lost in seconds. I think that's the main reason why we've transitioned over, among other things.
And on that note, you guys have started offering, transactional funding. Is that the best way to describe it? Or can you talk to us a little bit about that and what that looks like?
Yeah, so it was really born out of necessity. We created an internal fund for our own deals just because we didn't want to pay what the fees were. Mike and I had gone to some masterminds and everyone told us, you can't find anything under a point or 2 points for transactional funding. And obviously we didn't want to get rid of all of our margins. So we built out the fund for ourselves. And the more we did it, we realized that this is a product that other people could really use, and people kept asking us about it, right? Hey, I know you guys have a fund, can you fund this deal? Can you fund this deal for me? So it was really one of those things where we built it out and people started asking us about it. So we figured we might as well make a business out of it and help other people out.
That's officially launching today. Flip Fund Capital is going to be nationwide, so I'm going to be help selling that, which I'm really excited about. I think it's, like Nadav said, it's built out of necessity. There's a lot of wholesalers who, they might come across a really good deal, and maybe it's on market, and the agent's like, no way you can assign this thing. Like, they don't have assignability in the contract, but they know it's a good deal. Like, that's kind of where we come in. So we're going to get really competitive with the rates, and I think it's going to be a really good product, and we're excited to launch that today. So yeah, nationwide, should be able to help with a lot of different that might not be fortunate enough to be able to put together a fund kind of like we have for our own double closings. So
what's the website for that?
It's flipfundcapital.com.
Gavin, we've done quite a few deals together now. And as I worked with a few wholesalers out in the DMV area, some in Florida, some in North Carolina and South Carolina, one common thing I see is typically it's a lower purchase price. People are purchasing distressed homes. There's quite a few investors looking after those deals. So they're pretty easy to dispo, right, on the tail end most of the time. But with quite a few of your deals, we've seen 2 million, 1.7 million. Why are you guys focusing on those higher volume properties? And then also, how are you getting those?
Yeah, and Nadav can touch on this as well because San Diego does a good chunk of those type of properties. But I think what we found out here is what we're still trying to, master it. But we found that a lot of those lower end houses, 200,000, 300,000, they come with a ton of title issues, right? I think one thing we found with some higher end stuff is, these people are obviously selling, they live in a $1.5 million house. Realistically, at the end of the day, they're probably pretty smart with their money. They're not behind on taxes. I shouldn't say that for every situation because that could be true, but the titles are a lot cleaner, right? We feel like with the seller being, and maybe this is a bad way to put it, a little bit more educated, right? They can kind of tell what the market might dictate, right? So if something's listed for, 1.5 and every single offer is coming in at 1.2, 1.3, whatever that number might be, they're more likely to make an educated decision, be like, okay, this is probably at the end of the day what my house is worth. And if you think about it in percentages, it's actually, a lot less money taken off versus, if something's $300,000 and it needs to be at $200,000, all of a sudden you're looking at, a 33%, cut in what the seller might take away. So I think that's kind of what we're trying to target right now in the Florida office. And I guess we also feel that the people that are buying these houses are they're pretty savvy, right? They started 10 years, 15 years ago doing the $300,000 houses, right? And they slowly built up to be able to do these higher end houses and do what they want, put a ton of money into them. And they're pretty educated. They're really willing to take a look at these things. I don't know if Nadav wants to continue on that.
In San Diego, we really kind of figured out the higher end market there. Similar to what Gavin said, the lower price points, one, there's a lot more competition, right? Everybody goes after it. That's the obvious choice. The shitbox and bad neighborhood, but with a lot of comps and flipping activity. There's tons of competition. The margins are slim. There's usually not too much room on them unless you get them at a really good price. But it's also, for us, it's about, I think there's a little bit more painting the picture that happens on these higher end properties, right? I mean, you buy something at 1.2 and it's worth 1.7. Could you get 1.8? Could you get 1.9 if you do a really good job? Yeah, you can, right? Because, it's in a good location and there isn't as much inventory that's updated. And we've also found that there are a lot of these properties that need to be renovated at these higher price points because it's grandparents, right? The grandparents passed away or they're moving to a retirement home and they haven't updated in 40 years. And the new buyer, especially with today's interest rates, right? The new buyer doesn't want to go in and spend a year renovating a property and carrying a, $15,000, $10,000 mortgage while they do it, right? They just, can't really afford to do that, right? So we're seeing, like, we do quite a few deals in La Jolla, and that was kind of something that it's a high end area of San Diego. We figured out no one's really buying, it's either investors are buying these dated houses or that's really the only people that are buying these dated houses. Essentially, it was just investors. Like, homeowners weren't going in, an owner occupant wasn't going in and renovating them. So there's just this gap of, like, either people, if they want to pay $3 million for a house, they can probably pay $3.5 million for the house and not deal with the headache. So I think there's a little more room for negotiation, one, and there's just a lot of them and less competition. There really is a lot of these dated houses in these high-end neighborhoods.
One last thing about that is, like, having the fund that we do, like, we can afford to close on those, right? I think that also makes a huge difference. I know the California laws are obviously different than out here, but I think that gives us a lot better chance of getting these properties that are higher end to, we're the actual buyer versus just assigning the contract, right?
I can definitely see that advantage, right? Yeah, I used to live in San Diego for 13 years. Miss it very much. What does that market look like these days? What is California looking like? I mean, I'd love to hear. I sold my house there in 2016. It shouldn't have done so. I was near the beach. Whatever. We all make bad decisions in life. Yeah, what's the market look like these days?
It's strong, honestly. It's one of those markets. I only moved out there about 4 years ago, or I guess 3.5 years ago. It's one of these areas that's so expensive, right? You're just like, how does this continue to go up? I'd say it's definitely flatlined a bit. It's gone down a little bit. Not like Florida. There's just demand. I mean, I know there's a lot of politics that like create, regulation headaches for everybody, which also prevents new construction, right? The inventory is always going to be low because it's impossible to build anything there because of all the permitting you need to do and the years and are you even going to get the property for the right price on the front end, right? So it's just so hard. They implement all these new measures to increase units and density, but they don't do anything to make it any easier, right? So it could take 2-3 years to get permits for a small multifamily house or some row homes. So because of that, it just keeps prices inflated, and it's definitely a place that people move to once they've made money doing very random things. We've met a lot of different investors that, one started like a matcha brand, right? Other people like sold, they were part of tech and like sold their business, right? You just meet a lot of people like that just, they did well in their life and they moved to San Diego and they want to invest in real estate. So it's just kind of one of those areas that I think is the market seems very strong.
Yeah, there was a lot of small businesses there. I mean, when I was there were so few marketing jobs, advertising jobs. Like in San Diego, LA would have more, and there's so many small business owners that had figured it out to some degree. Such a unique area about that spot. So,
Yeah, I mean, the job market's terrible for
yeah,
somebody who's like entry level. I mean, it's terrible unless
yep.
you're in biotech. It's which I think is why we've been able to retain a lot of our people that have come in because it's like, what else are you going to go do as a 25-year-old, 26-year-old?
I've never seen more sought after waiting jobs than San Diego, right? I mean, it's like you have to be like the greatest resume of all time to get a wait tables there.
So yeah, it's a lot of entrepreneurs, and I think it's cool because it's inspiring. Because people that want to be there, they just there's a lot of people that are hustlers, right? It's very different than LA, right? It's people that are obviously you have family money, right? Like of course you do, but a lot of people that are out there are really out there because they work hard, right? And they know they have to work hard if they want to continue living there. Otherwise, they move.
So you guys are known for building a strong culture, but also you got a lot of young people that we've touched on. How are you guys finding these people? How are you keeping them bought in? What's kind of the center behind all that?
Yeah, I mean, we have a recruiting team. It's really a full-time recruiting job. I kind of joke sometimes like we're in the recruiting business. We're not in the wholesaling business because it is something where there's a lot of turnover in the beginning, right? In the first 3 months of somebody's career. Because you interview someone, they say they want to be an independent contractor making 1099 commission, right? But then push comes to shove and they don't actually want to do the work, right?
Mhm.
And it is hard. And yeah, you can get good paychecks, but it takes time. So you always got to anticipate. You can never be comfortable with the amount of people that you have. I think there's, building a winning culture with, applying pressure, right? Where there's, we're always going to be hiring people. So, now's your time to, really build your relationships. Otherwise, someone else is going to come in and they might sell more houses than you, right?
Do you recommend some people kind of moonlight a bit in the sense of like waiting tables to like produce some kind of income over the first 3 to 4 months?
Yeah, I mean, a lot of people do that, right? In the beginning, they'll wait tables on the weekends or bartend, something like that, where it's not during, Monday through Friday, 8 to 6 p.m., right? If you have to leave for a job at 3 o'clock every day, it makes it really, really tough because you never know when a deal is going to come out, right? And you could be missing opportunities, right? We put out deals at 3, 4, 5 o'clock at night all the time because that's when we got it signed up. You do have to be available to do that because then you're just digging yourself a hole, right? Because you could have the buyer, but you're not around a phone. So how are you going to sell the property? But yeah, I think it's the people that I've seen succeed in this. I mean, a lot of people didn't even tell me that they were working a second job, right? They just put their head down, they worked a second job, they drove Uber, they did whatever they needed to do and knew like, hey, this is short term. I'm going to be successful here. I got to push through until I can, get my first couple sales.
So you guys have acquisitions members, you have disposition members. What makes a good acquisition person outside of the dispo side? How do you guys choose that, or is it kind of pick your own road?
We mainly start everybody in the dispo role, which I know a lot of wholesalers don't do because you learn a lot, right? I mean, somebody who's new to the industry, how do they know how to negotiate an investment property if they haven't been beat up by an investor before? You got to get beat up by the investors. You got to make the calls. Not only are you going to learn from us, but you're going to learn from all the investors that you're talking to every day. You're going to understand rehabs, right? And you understand every investor. You ask 30 different investors what a property's rehab is going to cost. You're going to get 30 different answers. It's understanding, okay, well, this person's always high. This person can get things done cheaply. This person seems to be buying a lot and they've really invested a lot of time in getting their labor costs down. So this is what really good investors should be able to get their rehab done for. There's an aspect with the wholesaling, right? You can be too conservative or too aggressive. we say we sell to optimists because you're always going to have these people that are extremely conservative where it doesn't even make sense. But then it's also, the investor that overshoots their rehab, right? Like my parents, they went and renovated the kitchen and bathroom and they spent so much money on their rehab, right? If you're spending retail prices on your rehab, you're also not going to be able to invest in flip houses because if you're spending 50 grand on a kitchen that is in a $500,000 house, you're going to lose. So there's a lot of factors in the wholesaling side and understanding how to negotiate, because if you're too conservative when you're negotiating, you're never going to get a deal. But yeah, everyone starts in the dispo role, and there's some people that are a little bit more analytical. The dispo agents that are less, I would say, positive are generally a little bit better at the acquisition side because they can, they already have that kind of investor mindset of being kind of a downer, right? Because you're going from selling upside to selling downside. They're two completely different jobs. So I don't think they're necessarily, if you're good at dispo, you're not necessarily good at acquisitions and vice versa.
And then with those teams, tell me about the Top Dogs dinner, because Gavin told me a little bit about a little incentive that you guys got going each month.
Yeah, top dogs dinners, top acquisitions for the month, and then top dispo agent for the month. Get to pick a spot, usually like a steakhouse or something. There's no real, well, I don't know about this, Nadav, but I don't think there's really a limit. There's supposed to be, but usually we have a pretty good time. But that happens, yeah, at the end of every month. So I think it's good incentive for all the acquisitions guys and the dispo guys or girls for them to, I guess, be rewarded for their hard work. And we always have a great time at the dinner. So usually we try to mix and match with where we're going, but sometimes there's a couple staples that you end up going to. So it just rewards their hard work, but we always have a good time at them.
Yeah, and then snowballing that into the year-long challenge of, wrapping up deals, getting the acquisitions and dispositions. I heard you guys have a nice little hefty reward for the top acquisition specialist of the year, maybe top dispo specialist and top GM of the year. Is that true?
Yeah. So just going off the incentive aspect, there gets a point where it's, you're going to make money. You're going to make really good money, right? So I think the incentives are what keep people around and they keep them, coming back as opposed to just being like, all right, I'm just going to go do this on my own. So people enjoy the team aspect. Everyone got or the top people in the company, dispo acquisition, GM, they got Rolexes this year. And then we'll do incentive trips. We set a goal out at the beginning of the year and we took the San Diego office. They chose it to go to Hawaii for the weekend. Weekend turned into, 5 days, of course, but something that I think really builds the culture, the winning culture, and keeps people around. So I think the investing in your people is the most important part.
So with that, the building up the people, what do you think's harder, building people up or building the systems up and then finding the right people for that system?
Yeah, the reason why Mike and I became business partners because he's really good at the building the systems up. I'm terrible at it. That is something that I barely know how to use our own Salesforce. It's pathetic actually. But so for me, I think personally building the people up, but I think most people have a harder time building the people up just because you're dealing with personalities, right? Everyone who comes into this, everyone's their own person. You have characters. Everyone's an individual, and you're managing personalities. And I have a 1.5-year-old son at home, and I come home and I'm like, I have 60 children at the office that I'm dealing with every day. So it feels like that sometimes, but it's awesome. It makes it fun.
Yeah. I mean, the systems have changed. The systems have changed quite a bit since I first started, right? I think we went from, having to type contracts out just by hand, fill in the DocuSign, fill in the bubbles, all that good stuff, to now it's just basically like click a couple buttons in Salesforce. So quite the evolution of how we're doing things, which is obviously makes our lives a lot easier on the efficiency side of things.
Yeah, I mean, you need the systems to scale, right? Like you can't scale without the systems. And I think that's a really important aspect of it. You can't track anything. You don't even know when closings are, right? Like if you don't have the right systems in place, you can't do anything, let alone scale. So they're equally as important. It's just a matter of, what you're better at.
You'd mentioned earlier, you mentioned a mastermind. Do you guys JV with other wholesalers across the country at all? Do you guys share information? What does the mastermind ecosystem look like for you guys?
We stopped going to the mastermind, honestly, because they told us that doing $4 million a year in wholesale fees was impossible. I was like, I'm getting out of this room because everyone's very small minded. They can be good. They can be really good when you're starting off. We did learn a lot from them. We just outgrew it, right?
Yeah.
It's good to create connections with people across the country. I mean, you have all these nationwide wholesalers out there that just market in a bunch of different markets, and they don't have the buyers, so they'll
Yeah.
bring us deals, absolutely. And as far as the JV thing goes, where you have 10 people blasting out a deal at different prices, and we don't do that. We're not putting anything out. We're not putting our name on it if we don't have a contract on it. Because if our investors want the deal, they need to know that they can get the deal, and it's not like this back and forth.
You'd mentioned you're dealing with distressed situations. You hear sometimes, people talk about the reputation of wholesaling. What is your take on it? How do you speak to what's happening here? And, like you said, I mean, I actually see a lot of value in what you're doing. So, hey, you don't have to go get a listing agent. You don't have to renovate the house. You can move quickly. Tell me the pros and cons and kind of how you view it.
There's a lot of really bad wholesalers out there, right? I mean, let's be real there. It's just a matter of providing value right to the sellers. And I mean, if it's going to an investor, it just doesn't make sense for a seller to go with a listing agent, because we still need it at our price. The investor still needs it at their price, right? And then they're losing money because now they have to pay this listing agent that is, generally tells them the house is worth way more than it is, and they really just get in the way of we all know it's going to sell for, and they want to act like they're bringing value to the transaction because they're getting their money, but they're really just getting in the way. So because it's like a game of telephone, how can I portray to the seller that I'm here to help them and figure out what their true issues are, whether it's, hey, they need time after closing, they need help with moving costs, they need, they're behind on their HOA payments or whatever it is, and we need to front that money before closing, right? Like, I can't help them if I don't know any information. And usually the agent is like, that's none of your business. So it just makes it more difficult, and the seller doesn't get the full experience as they should, right? They're not getting the full package of working with us through an agent. But then it also takes a lot long. I mean, especially in Florida, you could be sitting on the market for 6 months.
It's interesting you say that, because what I was going to say is my family. So we had a family home in Northern Virginia, and basically we lived there for 17 years. My family knew that we wanted to sell it at some point, but having 4 kids who were all spread out, it was like the storage unit of the house, of the family. And one day my dad, being impatient, just put out an offer on a cabin on the top of a mountain in Tennessee. And he doesn't know much about real estate, so he ended up realizing that his offer was contingent upon the sale of our family home. So my mom called me crying one day. I'm just like hoping everyone's healthy and fine. And she's like, your father has submitted an offer on a property contingent upon the sale. Like, I need you to hook me up with one of your investors who can just purchase it for cash and close within 14 days, because that's what we need, right? And me being in real estate, I was kind of able to talk her off the ledge a little bit. I was like, hey, I can introduce you to an investor, but like, you're in a really nice area. It's appreciated quite a bit. Like, why don't I intro you to one real estate agent and then one investor, but you have to meet with the agent first just to check. And for their situation, they got a cash offer and we were able to close and get rent back through the agent. But like all of the investor buddies that I reached out to, they were like, oh, dude, we'll close in 7 days. It's great opportunity. So it makes sense, though. It's just based on what value you have for the seller. Because like in my mom's opinion, somebody who just didn't want to deal with the pain, right? She just wanted to know that she'd have that money for the purchase of the next property. That's all that mattered.
Exactly. And we do get a lot of, like, we purchase a lot of properties that exactly that situation. It's not necessarily your family wasn't in a distressed situation. They wanted to move on. Your dad put an offer on a place that he was excited about, and I got to get rid of this property that is doing nothing for me right now. And so if I don't get rid of it, I can get the money that I need out of it, right? Like, I get the money I need, hopefully I get a little bit more, and I can move on to my next and get that property, which is, why people buy real estate, right? They buy real estate and they can sell it and they can trade up or trade for something else. So you get a lot of people like that. I mean, you get people that are, get jobs out of state that we, help them out with, and giving them, it's not ideal, but giving them like 2-month rent backs, where it's like, because, they just wanted their family to be able to finish out the school year, but the dad had to go, move out of state to start the new job. Right. And it's like his new job is high paying and he's not worried about a little bit of extra equity. He just wants his family to be a little more comfortable during this move. Right. So there's all sorts of situations that aren't necessarily like your foreclosure, your death. Honestly, divorces are difficult. Everyone talks about these divorces, but you got two people that disagree. Right. It's, one person wants, to get rid of it. The other person, they're almost just working against each other because neither of them wants to make it easy on the other. Right. So I haven't had much success with divorces, but other people do.
You guys have expanded quite a bit across the country. How has this expansion occurred? Actually, we expanded to a couple states just purely by mistake. One was a vacation we went on, was like, we should open up a branch here. I think I heard some similar stories with you guys. How have you guys expanded, and what do you see moving forward in the future?
We're kind of in this boat of willing, ready, and able. If we have somebody who wants to move somebody and they're somewhere, they're able to, right? They have the experience needed and, they're willing to, we'll definitely kick around the idea. Both Mike and I had worked in Colorado for 6 years. So that was easy, right? We started there. I had moved to San Diego and it's like, well, I am not a work from home person. We might as well start here. Mike moved down to West Palm and we got Gavin to help run the office in Florida and get it off the ground. And, Gavin, can get the people going, and he was experienced as we really had at the time, right? To move down here and help do that. And then we had one of our other guys in Denver go out to North Carolina to open that office because Mike, he went to school in Raleigh, in the Raleigh area, so he kind of knew the market a little bit. So future expansion, Arizona, even though it's a little oversaturated, because we have one of our directors who wants to move back there eventually. I think easy expansion for us is going into Orange County and Los Angeles. That's a pretty easy expansion because those are all sub markets are interstate, are a lot easier to expand to. Like you have Raleigh and Charlotte, you have, you can even open something up down in Miami, right? Or Tampa, or, the West Coast, Tampa, St. Pete, right? Because the hardest part about opening up an office is all the learning all the contracts, learning all the regulation, learning how the market works, right? So you can get something off the ground a lot faster if it's, within the state, because you kind of, you're not dealing with any of that other stuff.
No, it makes a lot of sense. If people want to work with you guys, what's the best way to find you?
You can go to vertigorev.com. There's a careers page on there. You can apply there. Either Aaron or Sebastian will reach out and pass the first conversation test. They'll schedule you an interview, and then we go from there.
Awesome. Well, listen, guys, really appreciate the time. I love what you're doing. I like the fast growth. Seems like you have a great crew of people that really bought in. And actually, we've grown the exact same way, which is there's been really no strategic plan except for people wanting to move to different parts of the country, and we believe in our people, and it worked out. So I like what you guys are doing. There's similar stories on both sides. Appreciate you guys, and thanks for the time today, man.
Yeah, thank you guys so much for having us. Appreciate it.
Thanks, guys. I appreciate it. That was awesome.